Hello and welcome. In this video, we will break down Polymetal's second quarter earnings report. We will look at their production results, their income, their cost to produce, and their profit and loss. Looking at production, for the first half of 2014, Polymetal produced 386,000 ounces of gold versus 311,000 ounces the first half of 2013, for an increase of 24%. And for the first half of 2014, Polymetal produced 15.5 million ounces of silver versus only 14 million the first half of 2013, for an increase of 11%. Looking at sales, for the first half of 2014, Polymetal sold 352,000 ounces of gold versus only 293,000 the first half of 2013. And for the first half of 2014, Polymetal sold 13.9 million ounces of silver versus 11.4 million ounces the first half of 2013. So both production and sales in the first half of 2014 were significantly higher than the first half of 2013. Looking at Polymetal's revenue, for the first half of 2014, Polymetal sold 352,000 ounces of gold for an average price of $1,297, for a revenue of $456 million from gold. In the first half of 2013, Polymetal had sold 293,000 ounces of gold for an average price of $1,441, for an income of $422 million from gold. So for the first half of 2014, the revenue from gold was $34 million, or 8% higher than the first half of 2013. Looking at silver, for the first half of 2014, Polymetal sold 13.9 million ounces of silver for an average price of $19.10, for an income of $266 million from silver. Versus the first half of 2013, Polymetal sold 11.4 million ounces of silver for an average price of $24.30, for an income of $276 million from silver. So for the first half of 2014, Polymetal's income from silver dropped by about $10 million, or 3%. Total income from metal sales in the first half of 2014 was $726 million versus only $721 million the first half of 2013, for an increase of about 1%. So what we can see is a 20% increase in gold sales for the first half of 2014 and a 23% increase in silver sales for the first half of 2014. Offset the decline in metal prices, and Polymetal's revenue for the first half of the year was slightly higher than the first half of last year. Looking at the consolidated income statement, we can see that Polymetal grossed $727 million, up almost $6 million from the $721 they grossed the first half of 2013. We can also see a reduction in the cost to produce this income, down from $441 million the first half of 2013 down to about $430 million. So we can see that Polymetal produced more metal while at the same time reducing costs. The reduction in cost came from an increase in ore grade, so there was more metals produced out of each ton processed, a 9% reduction in labor costs, and a reduction in energy costs. In addition to that, the first half of 2013, Polymetal incurred a $106 million write-down from the inventories as metal prices dropped, and they recouped $2.6 million of that the first half of 2014. So the gross profit from production for the first half of 2014 is about $300 million versus only $174 million the first half of 2013. In addition to that, Polymetal reduced their general and administrative expenses by about 35%, down from $100 million down to $65 million, by reducing general and administrative labor costs by 12%, services costs by 38%, and a 97% in share-based composition, which is things like stock options. In addition to that, we see 6% reduction in other expenses, and a reduction in expenses and some investments. But the main factor is we also see that the first half of 2013, that Polymetal incurred a $189 million impairment charge that they did not incur the first half of 2014. This was basically a write-down of the value of all assets from the drop of metal prices. Looking at the rest of the statement, we can see that a loss on disposal of subsidiaries was down from $76 million in the first half of 2013 down to $26 million the first half of 2014. And looking at the other finance costs and expenses, the pre-tax profit for the first half of 2014 was $141 million versus a loss of $265 million. There was a significant increase in the rate of taxes for this year. So for the first half of 2014, Polymetal paid $41 million in taxes versus a $9.7 million credit they got in the first half of 2013 for all the write-downs. So we can see that for the first half of 2014, Polymetal made a profit of about $100 million, or about 14% of gross income, versus a loss of $255 million, or 35% of gross income, for the first half of 2013. In the first half of 2014, Polymetal grossed about $727 million, Of that, about 63% came from gold and 37% came from silver. I took the consolidated income statement and broke down each cost by multiplying each cost by its respective percent and then divided by the number of ounces produced to get a cost per ounce for production for the first half of 2014. This is known as the co-product method. By using the co-product method, we can see that the cost per ounce for gold was $1,103.67 and the cost per ounce of silver was $16.88. That is a significant reduction over the first half of 2013 by both an increase of production and a decrease of costs. So that's Polymetal's second quarter results. For the first half of 2014, Polymetal's ore grade has improved, they've increased production, reduced costs, and they've gone from a loss of 35% for the first half of 2013 to a profit of almost 14% for the first half of 2014. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.